On May 20th, 2025, nearly 25 years after the killing, Benjamin Donny Richie was executed by lethal injection in Indiana. The crime was intentional. A police officer was shot and killed in the line of duty. 4 bullets were fired during a foot chase. One struck just above protective vest, ending the life of a father, a husband, and a 10-year veteran of the force. This is the story of that night, what led up to it, what Ritchie did after his final plea, his last meal, and his final words. Benjamin Donny Richie was born on May 3, 1980, in Indiana. From birth, his life was marked by hardship. His biological mother, Marion Martin, battled substance abuse throughout her pregnancy. The outcome, a diagnosis of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, a condition that would haunt him forever. Soon after birth, he was abandoned by both his mother and her partner. He entered a system ill-equipped for boys like him. Eventually, Vera and Oscar Ritchie adopted him, but adoption didn't fix the damage. Chaos continued at home. His adoptive parents struggled to discipline him, and Benjamin found it hard to bond. He was often detached, unpredictable, and volatile. At school, it was no different. Teachers reported impulsive behavior, mood swings, and aggression. He repeated the 1st grade. By 9th grade, he dropped out. He couldn't keep up. By his late teens, he had already come to the attention of local law enforcement. In 1998, at age 18, he was convicted of burglary. The sentence? Probation. A second chance. But the warning was ignored. What no one realized was that Benjamin Richie wasn't just a troubled teen. He was a ticking time bomb. Every arrest, every missed opportunity, was a second lost. On September 29, 2000, in Beech Grove, Indiana, a quiet night spiraled into chaos. It began with a stolen vehicle. At just 20, Ritchie had been spotted driving a red Chevrolet that wasn't his. When police tried to pull him over, he fled. What followed was a dangerous chase through residential streets, ending in a narrow alley near 17th and Albany. The vehicle crashed and Ritchie ran. Officer William Tony gave chase, a veteran of the Beech Grove Police Department. Tony was known for keeping calm under pressure. That night, he ran after Ritchie on foot, believing it would end in an arrest. But as they rounded a corner behind a house, Ritchie drew a .380 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Without hesitation, he turned and fired 4 shots at Officer Tony. One bullet pierced just above the vest, slipping into the fatal space between armor and neck. The damage was catastrophic. Tony collapsed immediately. By the time backup arrived, it was too late. Officer Tony, 31, father of 2, was dying in a stranger's backyard. Ritchie vanished into the night. The manhunt started immediately. Dozens of officers joined in, locking down neighborhoods and chasing leads. Just a day later, police found Ritchie hiding at a friend's home on the south side of Indianapolis. He was quiet, armed, and alone. Police surrounded the building. There was no shootout. Ritchie surrendered peacefully, but the damage had already been done. News of Tony's death rippled through the state. Flags lowered. Officers wore black mourning bands. The funeral drew officers from across the Midwest. Bagpipes played. A folded flag was handed to the officer's widow. His children sat silently in the front row, faces numb, caught between grief and confusion. Investigators pieced the case together quickly. The car had been stolen. The gun was illegal. Ritchie was on probation for burglary, making gun possession a violation. But these were minor in comparison. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't panic. It was a choice. As the prosecutor said, it was a calculated ambush, cold and self-serving. The public demanded justice. The state vowed to deliver. In August 2002, nearly 2 years after the murder, Ritchie faced trial. The charges were many: murder, auto theft, resisting law enforcement, and illegal firearm possession. But the real question was this: should Benjamin Ritchie live or die for what he had done? The prosecution was direct. They called it planned, ruthless. They highlighted Ritchie's record, his flight, his decisions. Most of all, they emphasized the moment he turned and fired. A split-second choice that places freedom over a man's life. The defense offered a different view. They spoke about Ritchie's past, his diagnosis, abandonment, instability, and lack of psychological support. They claimed his choices were rooted in untreated trauma. But the jury didn't see a broken...
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Boy. They saw a badge, a widow, and grieving children. On August 10, 2002, the jury found Ritchie guilty on all counts. After deliberation, they returned with a recommendation: death. 2 months later, on October 15, 2002, the judge confirmed it. Benjamin Donny Richie was sentenced to die by lethal injection. Following his sentencing, Ritchie was sent to Indiana State Prison in Michigan City. In a small cell, he began his long wait for execution. Like others on death row, he lived in extreme isolation. 23 hours a day in solitary, 1 hour in a caged yard, no physical contact. Yet Ritchie's story didn't fade away. Over the years, his case drew attention. He was featured in several true crime and prison documentaries focusing on death row inmates. To some, he symbolized a harsh justice system. To others, he was just a murderer given more attention than deserved. Still, Ritchie found connection in that darkness. While incarcerated, he started a long-distance relationship with a woman from Sweden. They met through a prison pen pal program. Letters, calls, and rare visits built their bond. Years later, she publicly shared their story in interviews and blog posts. She described Ritchie as soft-spoken, smart, and misunderstood. To her, he wasn't a killer. He was a product of pain and abandonment, a man who'd spent more time behind bars than in freedom. Whether it was love, obsession, or shared loneliness, only they knew. As the execution date approached, their bond grew intense. She remained his strongest supporter. Ritchie left behind letters, poems, and reflections, giving a rare look inside the mind of a man facing death. The road to execution in America is never short. For Ritchie, it lasted 23 years. His legal team filed appeal after appeal. They argued 2 points: poor legal defense during trial and unaddressed mental health issues, including fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. They cited brain scans, developmental delays, and behavior red flags ignored in court. But the courts weren't persuaded. Each appeal was reviewed. Some reached the Indiana Supreme Court. Others stalled federally. The outcome stayed the same. The conviction remained. The sentence held. Time moved on. By 2025, Ritchie had nearly exhausted his options. Only clemency remained. In May, just before the scheduled execution, Ritchie appeared before the Indiana Parole Board. It was his final formal plea. Sitting across from the board, hands folded, voice steady, he publicly addressed the crime. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the pain I caused, the life I took, and the family I destroyed. I'm sorry for everything." He admitted to killing Officer Tony. He described it as a moment of fear, panic, and chaos. But the board had heard it all before. They reviewed his history, the crime, legal records, psychological evaluations, and letters of support. Then they voted. It was unanimous. Clemency denied. The decision went to Governor Mike Braw. On May 14, 2025, the governor issued his final statement. "After reviewing the unanimous recommendation of the State Parole Board, I've decided the execution of Benjamin Richie will proceed on May 20th. Preparations began at Indiana State Prison. Ritchie, now 45, had spent more than 20 years on death row. The night before his execution, he was allowed a final visit with a spiritual advisor and family members. They spoke through glass for hours. It was his last interaction before the state carried out the sentence. His final meal came from Olive Garden. The tour of Italy, chicken parmesan, lasagna, and fettuccine alfredo. He ate alone quietly. Just after midnight on May 20th, 2025, Ritchie was strapped to the gurney. Witnesses, including Officer Tony's family, sat behind a glass barrier. Across from them, Ritchie lay motionless, arms secured, eyes open. When asked for last words, he said simply, "I love my family, my friends, and everyone who supported me. I hope they all find peace." Then he turned his head slightly and nodded. "I'm ready." The warden gave the signal. Lethal drugs flowed through 4 lines. In seconds, his breathing slowed. His eyes closed. At 12:46 a.m., Benjamin Donny Richie was declared dead. For Indiana, justice had been fulfilled. For Officer Tony's family, a chapter had finally. And for Ritchie, the long countdown had ended. His story of Benjamin Donny Richie is one of tragedy, trauma, and ultimately justice. It raises tough questions about accountability, mental illness, and whether true rehabilitation is ever possible after such a violent act. If you found this case as thought-provoking as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the most gripping true crime stories from around the country. We want to hear from you. Was justice served, or was this a system failing a man from the very beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, every case has layers, and every story deserves to be told. Stay safe, stay curious. See you in the next one.